Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where today we have another tactical preview. Of course, Manchester United's second game of the season against Spurs. Today we're going to talk about what Ten Hag will likely do for Manchester United and the best way to set up, but also how Postecoglou will set up with Spurs and kind of therefore what Ten Hag needs to do in order to counter that. So what I'm going to do is move this over here, 1 second. And we're going to talk about the tactical side of it. And I want to start initially with what Spurs are going to try and do on the ball, how United can set up to kind of counter that and nullify that, and then of course we will look at Manchester United in possession. So we are going to kind of briefly go through these points rather than really diving deep into them. However, I will be going live this afternoon to discuss it even further. If you are interested, make sure you get notifications on for that. But in terms of how Spurs will look to play the ball out from the back, they are now a possession side. Postecoglou likes his team to have the ball, and like I said, they will play out from the back, and it will be a 2-3 shape which looks a little bit like this. Vicario here will be looking to play the ball out to the centre-backs. The full-backs will be either side of Basuma in midfield, whilst the other two midfielders push a little bit higher up the pitch. Now, in terms of how I would set up as Manchester United, I am going to go for this lineup. Brought Sancho into the team, allowing Rashford to play in his best position on the left wing. We're also going to get the best out of Sancho in this role. And we have gone for Wan-Bissaka at right back. I'm still not convinced it's what I would do, but I do think it is what Erik Ten Hag will persist with. So, this is how Spurs will look to play the ball up from the back. And actually, there's real potential for this to work for Manchester United, because it allows United to go man for man in the midfield. Sancho can do that normal job which he does at the moment, where he's kind of forcing the centre-backs to play one way and then pressing from there. Bruno Fernandes can go man for man on Basuma. We've got Mount on Skip and Casemiro on Maddison. We've got two centre-backs back here covering Richarlison. So this is United's initial pressing shape. However, what I think we need to see a change with is the full-back connecting to the press. It needs to happen at Manchester United if this team wants to have success. Now, the best way for United to do this is for the wingers to initially start wide on the two fullbacks like this, giving the centre-back no passing options. Of course, Sancho is going to play his role, kind of forcing him to play one way. However, this kind of initially is good, right? Because Romero has no obvious forward pass on for him. Everyone is man-marked all over the pitch. There's nowhere he can really go. However, the problem that United have with this current structure is that when the ball then goes backwards, you then see Antony on this side is in a 2 versus 1 situation. What United need to start doing here is now connecting the press. Antony needs to curve and come from out to in onto Van de Ven, and Wan-Bissaka needs to get himself in this position here, so that if the ball does go over the top, he is ready to pounce like this. And this is where United then need to be a bit braver, a bit more adventurous with their press. They either need to make the decision to commit to the press high up the pitch and really go for it, or sit back. They're doing this in-between thing at the moment, which they were doing last season. United need to cut that out. If they press like this, they will cause genuine problems for Spurs, and there will be plenty of scenarios where you can win the ball back high and then get into really dangerous positions. Now, even if the United press is good, Spurs will have spells where they have the ball, because that's what they do under Postecoglou. From where, once again, they will look to use a 2-3 shape. However, it will be a little bit different. The two midfielders will push even higher like this into the half spaces, and the two fullbacks will come incredibly narrow. Very, very narrow indeed, especially Emerson Royale on the right-hand side. He will almost be a deep-lying midfielder at times. That's how narrow they will be. The best way for United to counter this, in my opinion, is to defend in a 4-3-3 shape, but in a really passive manner. I think that's the best solution. So passive, in fact, that I would literally drop Sancho in on Basuma like this. I would have Mason Mount, Casemiro and Fernandes matching up in midfield. Fernandes on Maddison, Mount on Skip with Casemiro being our spare man. Put the wingers on the two Spurs fullbacks like this. And then, of course, everywhere else you are man for man. Now, yes, in this situation, you are letting Romero and Van de Ven have the ball, but they have literally no passing option. And United have two spare players. One of the centre-backs is spare, and also Casemiro is spare, allowing United to be really defensively very solid. Spurs are not great at playing through structures like this, yet under Postecoglou. It could be a good time to play them while they don't have their patterns in place. It also provides the opportunity to set kind of pressing traps and triggers if United really want to. For example, baiting this ball across here, where perhaps Sancho then steps, Mount then steps, Casemiro steps onto Skip, and United suddenly go really aggressive. Something like this could work to, again, stop Spurs progressing the ball forward, but also genuinely give United opportunities to turn the ball over and then attack. So I think this passive sort of 4-3-3 shape could be a really good solution to stopping Spurs from playing the ball quickly through the lines, which is what they want to do. Try and stop that. Now again, even if United do that pretty well, there will be spells where Spurs are able to sustain pressure, get into the final third, because again, it's what they do under Postecoglou. The key thing to look out for here though, as a Manchester United fan, is Spurs will look to attack with a front five. They will get 5 players. It will be Kulusevski, Skip, Richarlison, Maddison and Heung-min Son all on the last line. Now there will be rotations, at times it will be different players, but they will have a front 5. So something that United may well need to do in this game is drop Casemiro into the defence at times. This is something he's good at, his box defence is very good. There may well be situations where he has to drop a little bit deeper like this, and United need to kind of retreat into their own box to deal with the ball in that kind of final phase. That is something to watch out for. However, what you should also watch out for is when United do turn the ball over, counter-attacking potential is really there in this game. Spurs are not very good at defending transitions at the moment. These gaps in behind the fullbacks are big. These are big gaps. And particularly with someone like Marcus Rashford, you could definitely find that space. So that is what to look out for in terms of Spurs in possession. United look to me like they could set up from a defensive point of view in a way which nullifies Spurs, but also gives United a lot of transitioning threat. So before we continue into the video, a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, JerseyFIFA.com, the home of all of the greatest football kits. Whether that be the new latest releases or the old classic ones like this, Jersey FIFA has something for everyone, and now you can check it out yourself using the link in the description down below. And also make sure to use code JerseyFIFA for 10% off when you order. Now it's time to look at things from the other point of view. How can Manchester United play out from the back, build possession through the pitch and take control of the game? Because again, that is something which Ten Hag will want to do in spells. And of course it starts with goal kicks, where Spurs will most likely set up in a 4-4-2 shape. I think Ten Hag needs to change his build-up structure from this position. Something that I was worried about in pre-season was Luke Shaw dropping into centre-back like this, Lisandro Martinez moving into midfield, and it leaving United with a lack of width down the left-hand side. It means that if the opposition want to, they can go man for man like this and cause some real problems. What I would like to see United doing is being even braver with their structure. Move Luke Shaw out wide, like this, and trust Andre Onana's on-the-ball ability to play this role here, because it stretches Spurs much more, and it also gives United the potential to 4 versus 2 that front two, because the wingers can't join the press because they're occupying the fullbacks, and if they do want to come in, then the players can play the ball over. So the wingers can't really connect, leaving Spurs with a front two, up against 4 players. It's a mismatch. United should be able to win that, particularly if they use natural pauser on the ball, which is something which Onana and Martinez in particular really excel with. I think you can draw these players in and then play around them. Spurs can't go with a piston press because they simply don't have enough players. Now Spurs could be super ambitious and push the midfielders up as well, but that really leaves them exposed where if the right pass is found, United will get through. I think if United set up in this way, they will be able to play out from the back and therefore kind of build possession, move into the next phase. If United are successful in this way, then Spurs will most likely set up in a really very narrow 4-4-2 mid-block. It will be a high defensive line, but a very narrow shape like this. I think the best way for United to kind of counter this while still having good rest defence is to build in a 3-box-3 shape. However, importantly in this game, I think it should be Lisandro Martinez stepping into midfield rather than Luke Shaw, simply because I think Lisandro Martinez has much better understanding of the angles you need to create in the centre of the pitch, but also when to step, when to move back. I just think he has a greater understanding, and I think that will help Casemiro a lot more. Now, of course, for any of this to work, the United players simply have to individually perform a lot better than what they did last weekend. They have to be much better with their first touch, much more controlled on the ball. Casemiro also needs to stay a lot deeper than what he was, but we'll discuss that in the live stream later. I think this shape, though, gives United a bit of potential. Because of the fact that Spurs will defend with quite narrow wingers, we saw it even in pre-season, I think it gives United the potential to progress the ball quite easily out wide. And this is why I want Rashford in this position, up against Emerson Royal. I think Garnacho would potentially struggle with the physicality of Emerson. Rashford shouldn't have the same problem. And I also think Antony down this side has the chance to, if he can't beat his man, certainly progress the ball up the pitch and allow United to move forward in that way. So I think naturally, that's a really easy way for United to progress the ball in this game. Get the ball wide, carry the ball up the pitch. That's a really good way of getting through this phase. The other potential though is, as always, with this box in the midfield, is to move the ball forward through the pitch, because you should be able to outnumber Spurs, especially if players are willing to take their time on the ball and kind of draw players onto them. I do think there is the opportunity to move this ball forward and get it in between the lines, especially with Jadon Sancho playing up front. At times he can drop into this position and almost create a midfield 5, allowing United to get the ball, turn and play from there. The other advantage of having someone like Jadon Sancho up front is that Spurs are very aggressive in this area. So if Sancho steps into this position, Romero will want to follow him. Or if it's on the other side, Van de Ven will want to follow him. It's what Spurs do. This does open up a lot of space in these areas here for someone to run into. This is an area where Spurs really struggled in pre-season, so watch out for that. Sancho dropping deep and then the runner coming from somewhere else. That could be another really good way in which United progress the ball through the pitch. Now, if United do all of these things well, it'll then be a case of can they break down that Spurs defence, which by this point will probably resemble more of a 4-2-3-1 shape when they're deep in their own phase, or at times a 4-4-1-1 like this. They'll be deep behind the ball looking to cut off spaces. Again, I think the 3-box-3 is probably the best method for United to use. I think it allows them to have players in the right area to defend transitions, but it also gives them the potential to break this team down. Again, the obvious area to get the ball forward and really get into 1 versus 1 situations is with the wingers up against the defenders. That is a real weapon which United can use in this game. Get a winger against a fullback, see if you can beat your man, be brave in this area. Of course, there is also the advantage of having someone like Mason Mount in this area. Making underlapping runs like this, 2 versus 1ing against the fullback is certainly a good solution. I also think United can be better in the middle of the pitch as well though, down the centre. By just making a little shift really. Moving Lisandro Martinez and Casemiro a little bit closer together, like this, as your double pivot, having them nice and close to each other, but then also moving your 2 10s slightly wider. So rather than having like a perfect box shape like this, a perfect square, move them a little bit wider. So they're a little bit closer to the fullback. Because what that does is it causes a bit of confusion in terms of, from the Spurs defender point of view, who's meant to be picking that guy up. It causes a little bit of confusion. For example, Skip, is he now meant to open up and go towards Mason Mount? Or is this Kulusevski's job? If it is the job of Kulusevski, then Lisandro Martinez has space to step into, but also so does Luke Shaw. So that could hurt the defence in that way. So therefore, it probably is more likely to be Skip's job and Basuma's to kind of monitor these areas, these half spaces of the pitch. But if you're doing that, and again you've got Jadon Sancho dropping in, there's potential for Jadon Sancho once again to make that 5 in the centre of the pitch and really outnumber this Spurs team, allowing United to move the ball forward into dangerous areas. Now, once United are literally onto the last line of defence, they will naturally have an overload in these areas. Spurs will defend with a back 4, and if United are attacking with a front 5, that gives the team real potential. We need to see a better counter-press in this game, particularly Casemiro. I think the rest of the team done it quite well, but Casemiro wasn't on it. We need to see improvements in those areas to sustain pressure. But I think United, this front 5 up against the last 4, it's then all about execution. This isn't a game where we need to see crosses chucked into the box. We saw Bruno Fernandes doing it last week. We saw Anthony do a couple. Casemiro swung a couple in, but there's no one in there. None of these players in this front 5 are targets in the box. So don't bother trying to cross it. It's not going to happen. It's not going to work. United need to work the overload. Be patient in these areas. Mason Mount again up against Emerson. This is an area you should be looking to exploit. And the same with Bruno Fernandes on the other side. This is where you can hurt this Spurs team. Move players off the line. Like this, in behind the defence. Because once Bruno Fernandes gets into this position, Van de Ven has to make a decision to come across. This then potentially opens up room for someone like Jadon Sancho. Or maybe it opens up room for Mason Mount. Or maybe Rashford on the far side, it opens up room for him. This is how I think United can hurt this Spurs defence. It won't be easy once they're in their set shape, but I still think there's a lot of potential. And that is how, for me, Ten Hag should set this team up this weekend. It won't be easy. This is a very difficult game. It will be very open at times. I'm not expecting slow possession football, but United need to make sure they are patient, not rushing the ball forward. The gaps in the midfield have to be much better. Again, we will discuss that live this afternoon. But United need to just individually be a lot better. Casemiro, from a defensive point of view, needs to read the game much better than he did last week. But the whole team, the spacing needs to be better. The first touch needs to be better. A bit of patience in the final third. I think United could definitely go on to win this game. In terms of a prediction, I'll go for... let's go a 2-1 win to Manchester United. Let me know yours in the comments down below. Let me know in general what you think of this tactical approach. Apart from that, thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.